Hey, so this has been a long time coming. Now, there's a lot of things to get off my chest, and I'll be completely honest, it's not going to be a short story. So I'm sorry for those who just don't have the time for a long video, or whatever the case may be. But I wanted to simply just get this off my chest. Now, as for everything that went down and how I'm feeling and all this other stuff, I will first point out that technically this story starts back in 2000, technically 2017 to 2018. Now, for those of you who know my history, you probably know me for my work in Lion's Den, my stuff with Gelly Tro, but mostly Lion's Den if you saw my stuff back then. Now, when it comes to the whole Lion's Den thing, obviously the reason why it lasted so long was because of the fact that I had a very free-form type of show. It didn't get bogged down or held down by any politics or any of this other stuff, because the thing was is that Lion's Den was open to anybody that could have a match and all this other stuff, right? Now, fast forward to 2017, and I decide to bring about this story where basically Lion's Den gets taken over into a regular show and abandons the whole point of Lion's Den and all this stuff, and Johnny was supposed to save it. And in 2018, I buckled down because I knew that it was taking way too long to make any Lion's Den stuff. People were saying Lion's Den was dead, and before the PPV even came to be, even Mr. Champion was basically saying he's no longer in Lion's Den, which really ticked me off because he was in the main event spot and all this other stuff. So, fast forward to 2018, in that spot where Lion's Den had underground, and honestly, I'm still proud of that, aside from the fact that Coke turned out to be what he turned out to be. And in turn, it felt like, I could finally progress, I can move on to 18, and all this other stuff, and basically everybody left. Joy Legend decided not to do it anymore, even though, I just had him win the gauntlet match, and he wouldn't even let me control the character and whatnot for the matches or whatever. And then with all this other stuff of people leaving, like literally there was only 2 things left, and it involved just free form matches for them. Everything else I would have to either cover for, and there was just so many factors into me just losing it that it really drained me, and it really made me feel like not only did I waste my time trying to do all this stuff, but it felt like, I'm not going to go to the lengths of saying I felt like a failure, but it really deterred me and made me feel like I can't finish what I start. And of course, later on, around the end of 18, beginning of 19, whatever the case may be, episode 3 finally came out. Of course, everybody was still complaining that, this is late and all this other crap. And of course, ironically, this is the saving grace of 2K games taking so long to produce a proper game that 2K19 is stuck around, and people aren't saying that I'm behind, whatnot, even though it's taken 2 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so I start prepping for episode 4 after that later. And when with 2K19 on the horizon and whatnot, I realized, like, seeing this in Mexico arena and whatnot, I'm like, this is way too good to pass up. Like, this really deserves to be used for something. So at that point, spur of the moment, I said, okay, you know what? I know that I got episode 4 in the works. I even got, like, some match stuff done, but I really want to take advantage of this, and in turn, I made Roots. Now, of course, that came with its own delays. I'm gonna be transparent, because Brian Wilson's probably not going to get upset at me, because he knows what went down as well. Just a lot of things happened, and one of the main contributing situations is that the main event 6-man tag match, the trios match more specifically, there was a bit of a issue going on, and a lot of other stuff. And one day, one day, like, Wilson just, like, not only left the chat, but he sort of gave this gift that was, like, kind of had this kind of disrespectful vibe to it. And I'm like, ah, so that's how you're gonna be. And in turn, like, of course, that's why, like, when it came to Wilson's spot in the match, I played off his heel persona and had him actually leave the match and actively punch Johnny. So at least he's not, like, getting buried, but rather he's sort of putting himself over in the sense of how much of a heel he is. But nonetheless, there was a bunch of delays, and in turn, that made it, take as long as the episode 3 did for 2. And then, of course, well, actually not of course, but for some real life stuff, I'll just quickly say, so before Roots came out and all this other stuff, while Roots was in progression and whatnot, my mother went into cardiac arrest, followed by going into a coma. Now, I won't go into deep depths about my experience with that, because that's it's more stuff for my therapist than it is for telling everybody around. But at first I'm in denial that she's gonna die, because I technically know that people can wake up from a coma. It's not impossible to survive it. And almost a year passes, and Roots is pretty much finished. It is pretty much finished, and it's ready to upload. And I can't remember the exact date, because I realized that it's not November 3rd, but it was I think maybe the month before or something like that. But my mom passed away. It was like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. She passed away, vital signs dropping and all this other stuff. And obviously that shook me. I wasn't even there to see her die. I had this blind hope that she survived and all this other stuff. And, of course, when you're in denial, it's not going to hit you right away. So, when, you hear about the news and whatnot, you're still trying to be optimistic to a degree, in the sense of, what happened is what happened. It's probably for the best. Fast forward to the funeral, and that's when the grief really started hitting me. And for a moment, I experienced what real deep depression felt like. it was almost scary in a sense. Now, granted, I didn't last for too long, thankfully, but going through the grief though was otherworldly, and it felt. I'm gonna be frank. It felt like as if I was living in a world absent from God, like as if God left the planet or something. And naturally, I've come to know that it's not uncommon to feel like that. But point is, though, is that while things like commissions, art commissions, and the LU Roots episode coming out, because thankfully that episode was finished and set to upload basically before she died, or at least was finished before she died, so all I had to do was upload it. Thankfully that picked up my mood. But of course the biggest issue though was that I was noticing my grief was completely suffocating my creative self. As you guys know, my passion is video editing, graphics, and all this other stuff. And of course, video editing is part of the job for doing CAW. And of course, there's just so many factors, right? I cannot tell you how many times each day I would get up, I would turn on my video editor, and my brain would literally say to me, let's do something else. No. And it was mentally blocking me from being able to work at all. Now, the people that haven't experienced this aren't going to get it, and they might argue that this is, trying to... The thing is that you don't know what it's like. Okay, anybody that hasn't experienced this will not understand that this is actually a thing. All right, they may think that they're just putting things off or whatever the case, but it's not the case. When you're going through grief, it literally either suffocates or it makes you purposely avoid it like the plague. And it was so hard to get a little bit of stuff done each day. And of course, I kept trying. And sooner or later, I started to be a little more consistent. And thankfully, at some point, I started to get stuff done. But you want to know when that time came? The time came? It was several months from when that happened. And with that time passing, literally, people were coming out with content and all this other stuff, and I was just frustrated. I was really frustrated. And in turn, I'm just thinking to myself, man, so much time has passed. People are questioning me on, why isn't stuff getting done? And, questioning why it's taking so long, or, hey, how's progress going? And I'm trying to explain that, hey, I'm sorry, but I can't, I'm having a lot of trouble. It's not me trying to shirk my responsibilities or anything. It's just happening. And time passes, and I'm just going on and on through this. And I'm like, bro, how am I even supposed to catch up at this rate? And, and I had to learn that there is no catching up. There is no catching up when you're going through something like this. You have to go through the motions, and you just wait for when you can get to that full productivity rate and whatnot. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm at full swing like I was before. Because before, how I was is I would just literally spend all day working on something. And hopefully it would be done within, a certain thing would be done within a few days. It's not like that at all. In fact, it's, if anything, it's cut in half or a quarter of that now. Now, am I saying that I'm slacking off? I'm not going to say that I'm always like perfect with my productivity, so to speak, but I'm a lot better than what I was before. And in turn, like, naturally, with coming to episode 4 of Lion's Den, you know, like, taking so long and constantly updating the group chat saying, hey, you know, today I was able to get some stuff done and whatnot, thankfully, which I would constantly do. Every single time I made some progress, I'll tell the chat about it. Like the LLU chat is basically just an update chat on how production is going. And the most frustrating part is, like, ever since episode 2 of LLU, people have constantly, like, told me either LLU is dead, or they thought it was dead, or telling me to quit LLU. Max, who was one of the founders of LLU and switched to an assistant and whatnot, tried to shut it down himself because he didn't believe, and like without even my say and whatnot. And granted, him and I talked about it later on, and he understands, you know, why I got ticked off by it, but still, it really, like, in a sense, it felt like it was me against the world at that rate. You know, there's some people that are willing to work it out with me, but at the end of the day, outside of those few people in LLU that are helping me make it work and whatnot, it's just like I'm on my own. And back to episode 4, it took a while. Even when I finished recording, I was still taking a while to get stuff done. Audio took a while. And then even that, after that, it would be the crowd reactions. Day by day, just working at it, grinding as much as I could, aside from when I had to... Actually, I'll get to that in a second, but there is a big factor that also helped things up as well. But slowly but surely, things would progress, and we're here we are now, where episode 4 finally came out. But the thing is like, not only am I experiencing all these people like feeling this way about LLU and trying to work on it and whatnot, but also, like, I had, like, at one time I had 4 things going on all at once. I had the Def Jam, I had Affinity, I had True One Pro, and I had LLU. And on top of that, if you guys remember that Dragon 1 show, the guy Ollie made me, paid me, because I had this great idea that I could just get paid for doing audio. And I said, like, I'm not willing to do audio because I'm busy, but if you're willing to pay me and whatnot. And he did. And granted, I should have I should have said for a higher price, to be honest, because at the end of the day, I hated working on the stuff at the end of the day because it just wasn't really that fun. Uh, and then fast forward to fast forward to after that, I'm still working on the Def Jam, Affinity, and LLU. Like literally days spent working on an Affinity match for a section, then going back to Def Jam for a section, and then if I'm lucky, I get a chance to work on LLU for a bit until people start asking me, "Hey, how's production going with Affinity?" After I just finished the Def Jam thing, and I'm like, "Dang it." So I'm either like, okay, just give me like a few days with LLU and then I'll get back to Affinity, or it's like, yeah, okay, I'll get back to Affinity even though I should be working on LLU. Non-stop, every day, working on highlight reel, trying to think of matches. And here's the thing. I stopped watching like live pro wrestling for a long while now. There would be the very odd occasion I'd watch a full live match or whatever, but like it got to a point where I lost my love for this. I stopped seeing pro wrestling for pro wrestling, and I just saw it from the designer's perspective. The highlight reel perspective of how to craft a match and whatnot. I started seeing segments as the kind of stuff where it's like, okay, they're doing this for the double cross or whatever, and I'm seeing matches like, okay, this is how they start and this is how they go from one section to the other, and I don't enjoy it anymore. I don't enjoy it, and I, in turn, with Ka, to be perfectly transparent, Ka feels like just a factory to manipulate the system to make content, to manipulate game models, to factory content and just shovel it out for other people to use. I'm just manipulating models and just trying to make some type of story that's might be good to most people. You know, fail 4-way Def Jam match, you know, that simulates, you know, a story. And then you got the Affinity stuff with Gelatro, you know, trying to, you know, manipulate a model in the game to make it feel like that person's actually alive and, you know, create this intriguing story. I think you get what I'm talking about at this point. Ka is no longer fun to me. And pair that up with this feeling from back with Lion's Den where it felt like I can't complete what I start. You know, you can't complete what you start. You can't sorry, I'm starting to run out of steam, so to speak, but you know, you can't complete what you start. People want you to quit. People thought you were dead. It's show-wise. People are wondering why you can't work any faster. And then constantly being busy with other people's content. And then episode 4 of LLU finally releases. 2 years in the making. LLU finishes. I cannot tell you how much of a weight has been lifted off me mentally to know that I finished LOU and that LOU not only is finished, but I get to not only continue what I want to do, but not continue what I want to do, but I'm getting closer to finishing what I started. Even if it may not be fun like it used to be back with, especially in 2014. Even if it's not fun for me anymore. The fact is that those things that I've set out to do, I'm actually doing it. And I've said it multiple times in the chat. I've told it to everybody that's, talked to me about it. LOU is going to be a signal for me, or a symbol for me, that I can finish what I started. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to be consistent with LOU. No. You see, once I finish Affinity, once I finish my Affinity and Def Jam stuff, I'm going to go back to work on LOU for the Chapter 1 finale. And I'm going to work at my own pace. I'm not going to expect y'all to believe that, it's still alive. But let me tell you this right now. If you're listening to this, the only way LOU is dead is if I actively say it is. Being dead doesn't mean you're just quiet for a while. Being dead to me means that the freaking person that runs it says it's over. Now, with that said, what do I do now? Well, right now I'm just focusing on Affinity. And when I get the Affinity stuff, I'm going to work on the Def Jam. And then LOU. So right now, yes, I know this whole mentality of you shouldn't work at it if you're not having fun. I understand that. And I agree. But it's more than a passion project for me. And I want to also fulfill what people ask of me as well. Now, granted, does this mean that, shows that I've started back on 2K14, like, say, the Master of the Peel Kick or the Open Gateway, does that mean I'm going to go back to them as well? Maybe. I can't confirm if I will or not. But those main things I'm talking about with LOU, Affinity, and Def Jam, I made a promise to myself that I will complete those things. And that's what I tend to do. For those that have been patient with me, I truly thank you. It means a lot to me. This thing has gotten personal, and it's almost 30 minutes long. But there's a lot to get off my chest, and that's what I said I'd do. I thank you for your patience. And I'm not ending it on your terms. I'm ending it on mine. Please respect that.